Welcome back and thank you for staying with All Angles. Now, Moti Group CEO Mokgajane says he wants company documents obtained by investigative news agency AmaBhungane to be declared stolen. Yesterday, Gauteng High Court Deputy Judge President Roland Sutherland set aside the gag order on the investigative journalism unit and also ordered that the Moti Group pay cost. Now, a previous decision had prevented AmaBhungane from publishing articles about the company based on documents it obtained and articles called #MotiFiles. Mokgajane says the documents contain sensitive information.
We've got information around proprietary information that, our own approaches and strategy to business. We've got records, we've got agreements, loan agreements, and a whole lot of other documents. So I'm of the view that most of those documents should not be in the public domain. They are confidential in nature. They are belonging to us and to the group, and they relate to individual personal information. Insofar as, and that's the issue, insofar as issues around public interest that came in many times around whether we are stopping the media from publishing issues of public interest. No, we're not. We're saying, give us the documents back. We want to treat these documents as stolen documents and not as they claim that these are leaked documents leaked by Clinton Paniker. A person who's a whistleblower myself is not going to trade documentation and information. A person who's a whistleblower is going to go to the police, open a charge, and by the way, there's no case against any of the Moti Group companies as we speak today or individuals in the Moti Group.
All right, staying with that story, AmaBhungane Advocacy Co-oordinator Caroline James joins us now virtually to give us her reaction. Caroline, I hope you heard that snippet of what the CEO of the Moti Group said to us. He says that he feels that Judge Sutherland erred in his decision because he's supposed to wait for the SAPS to conclude its investigation on whether or not AmaBhungane was an accessory to the crime after the fact when the documents were allegedly stolen. What's your response to that?
I think I would disagree with Mr. Mokgajane on that respect. I think it's important to recognize that the civil and criminal cases involved in this case are distinct. We know that the Moti Group has brought a criminal case against their former employee who they believe has stolen documents from them. But that is independent from us. There haven't been no criminal charges laid against AmaBhungane or our journalists. And so it's incorrect to assume that any criminal case has to conclude before the civil case can. And in our belief anyway, there is no criminal case to stand against us. And Judge Sutherland emphasized that those cases must, and that the conduct of any source, whether it's the Moti Group's employee that they believe has stolen documents or someone else, is irrelevant in determining whether AmaBhungane journalists are legally entitled to possess documents that they have received through a leak.
And I mean, something else that he was saying was that they are going to appeal this. So from yesterday's judgment, does that mean AmaBhungane will start releasing these files, or you have to wait for the possibility that yesterday's court order may be taken on appeal?
So as it stands, no appeal has been filed yet. And so we are going on the assumption that the order from yesterday is in place, which completely suspends the order that the Moti Group obtained earlier. And so we are entitled to access the documents that we have access to and are entitled to publish articles based on that. It's sort of editorial decisions on if and when those articles will be published. But as we have done throughout the reporting on the Moti Group, our journalists would now that they have access to those documents, would be assessing the content of them very carefully and then putting together questions to send to the Moti Group and Junaid Moti, depending on the content of the story, for them to then give their response. So any article would naturally take time before it could be published. But as it stands, no appeal has been filed, and so we are not legally bound by any statements made by the Moti Group that they intend to appeal.
Mokgajana says there's about 4,000 documents that AmaBhungane wants to sift through and start releasing, etc. And his suggestion is that perhaps you should let them know exactly which parts you want to make public, because some of it, will trump on their right to privacy.
Yeah, I think this is something that has been brought up quite repeatedly throughout this case. There is no obligation on journalists to provide the full documents that they have received through a leak. In fact, it's our ethical duty to not provide an entity like the Moti Group with those documents, because it would reveal the identity of the source, which we are not neither obliged nor entitled to do so. Absolutely. Source protection is key, and Judge Sutherland highlighted that. But I think that what also needs to be emphasized is the way investigative journalism works is that very often you receive a trove of documents, which includes a variety of elements, whether it's sort of irrelevant private information or information that is in the public interest to report on. And journalists always assess that and are also ethically bound not to release private and confidential information that would infringe on the intimate details of an individual when that isn't in the public interest. And so we may have access to these 4,000 documents, but that doesn't mean that we would just be releasing them sort of ad hoc and on a sort of mass scale. Any release of those documents or portions of the documents would be redacted and limited to what's necessary for the interest of the public would be done through a formal article process. It's not going to be just dumped on some obscure website or something that anyone can then access all 4,000 documents.
And of course, they can also be called for a response every now and then to the allegations when you do the paper trail, right? When you join the dots. But also, Caroline, this also shows that it's not a victory only for media freedom, but also a victory for instance, a whistleblower. Mr. Mokgajane is saying that we shouldn't really call the person who allegedly stole these documents a whistleblower because he, stole private company property, etc. But, then if the court had to, rule the other way, it would put whistleblowers in a predicament, wouldn't it, in terms of whether or not they're able to flag something to the media that they see wrong. Because then they would just be told that they stole the documents and therefore this will not be investigated, or etc. All right, it looks like we've lost Caroline James there. She is the Advocacy Co-oordinator for AmaBhungane. And I was just asking that question because a lot of them have been saying that yesterday's judgment by Judge Sutherland in terms of AmaBhungane and the Moti Group is a victory for media freedom. And I agree, but also, in terms of what the Moti Group is trying to achieve with the investigation that it says is still with the SAPS on whether or not these documents that AmaBhungane has was actually stolen. And there are, Caroline does actually say that they got those documents from a leak. And then Mokgajane said that then there's a thin line on whether or not we decide that that person who leaked that information to the media is in fact a whistleblower. But then in a country like ours where we see what's happened to whistleblowers, your Babita Deokaran, etc., how then do they ensure that wrongdoing is exposed if it's not the media that they can expose it to? It's quite an interesting topic that will definitely expand. Let's take you